workshop, we staged a 3-day weekend conference called Connect, which was all about trying to focus on the kind of the money problem in news media and technical news media. And it was a 3-day event focused on entrepreneurship, fundraising, et cetera, and over the course of that weekend, we met Hazel Sheffield, who is here, or got to know Hazel better, who is here this evening to talk about the work that she's been doing in self-supported journalistic fundraising. And I won't go into it, but I'll let her take it away. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Jeremy. This is my Twitter avatar and when I had long hair, and my handle. So Federica actually asked me to come and speak tonight after I was interviewed by the FT back in February about grant-funded journalism projects. And I wondered how many people here have already applied for grants. Maybe just a show of hands if you'd have applied for a grant to fund a journalism project, maybe? Okay, so not many people. And what about if you have thought about applying for a grant for a project, but you haven't actually done it? Okay, a few more people. Okay, I need my clicker. Oh yeah, so I've basically funded the last 3 years of my journalism through grants. And before that, I funded my way through a master's at Columbia with fellowships and scholarships. And at first, that was because I'm not from a rich family and I don't have good networks, so that was out of necessity. But since then, I've learned that it's a really good and interesting way to fund creative and exciting work at a time when newsrooms often can't afford to do that. And so this talk is to help you identify the right kinds of projects for funding, what to remember when applying, and where to look for those opportunities in the first place. So what can you get through grants? Pretty much anything. And there are 2 ways that I think you should look at this. Either that you have an idea and you need some money, or you have found a funding opportunity and you need an idea. Both are really valuable, but I urge you to think big, because you're going to have to convey loads of passion and probably spend loads of time on your application and then spend loads of time on your project if you get the money. So you need to think about what you really care about. And if you could do anything, what would you choose to do? A little bit about how I came to this. I was the business editor at The Independent in 2016, which was when the newspaper closed. And I was promised a few things, didn't happen, normal stuff that happens in big news organizations. And so I started to Google for other opportunities. And then I found this Quaker foundation, which I'd never heard of, called the Friends Provident Foundation. And they were advertising for a journalist fellowship. It was their first year doing this. And you had to pitch an idea to them, like a book or a project of some kind. And it had to be about local economic resilience. That's all it said. So I sat down and I thought about what I wanted to do, which I wasn't doing in the newsroom, which is writing features and traveling to places that I'd never been to before. And then I tried to think of a project about local economic resilience. And I pitched them this idea that I would map local economies in the UK who were finding solutions to austerity. So I said I would travel around the country and interview these communities and write articles about them and make some short films and then literally put on a map where I'd been and the kinds of projects that were going on. And I didn't get it. I spent ages on it. And it went to an FT journalist who had a book contract with a major publishing house who wanted to write about GDP. But Friends Provident were nice people and they liked my project, even though I was much younger than this guy, probably a bit more of a punt. So they asked me to apply for their regular round of funding. And I did get that. And that was £45,000 to start this project that I called Far Nearer. And they've since given me another round of that funding to fund it for a second year. So that kind of funding has basically been a wage for me for, 2 years now with a gap in the middle. I get paid every month to do this project. I get extra money set aside for expenses like the website, for travel expenses, to employ people to work on things if I need to. So why did I get that money? Because I applied. I don't think I'm special anyway. I definitely haven't got as many skills as the other people who have spoken this evening, but I did apply, and I wouldn't have got it if I hadn't. And so it sounds obvious, but actually most people don't apply for these things. And especially if you see something where the deadline has been extended, definitely apply. So you're going to apply. How do you write a good application? Don't be half-baked. Think of it like a job. So you need to come up with a year-long project. Don't give them some vague ideas about, what you might like to do, what you have done in the past. Find out what your stories are. Find out who the sources are. Go and talk to these people. Put in lots of detail. Tell the funder that you have the contacts and that you're capable of doing this. People will bank on you if they think you're going to succeed. And so show them that you can. Ask loads of questions to the funder. It shows that you're interested, and it also shows, and they might tell you something else about the application that they haven't written down. And finally, just always try and talk to somebody who's already had the grant, because they can tell you, you might glean from them why they got it, and then that might help your application too. And essentially, remember the magic word for funders, which is impact. It's a really tough one. As journalists, we know what we're trying to achieve. We're going to write a story. We're going to publish it. That's it. But funders, they think about journalism completely differently. They want numbers. They want page views, numbers of people who attended an event. They want readership figures. They want to prove that their funding has been worthwhile. So you have to try really hard to provide that for them. Friends Provident Foundation's mission was literally to make local economies more resilient. So I had to somehow prove to them that by funding a journalism project, that would happen. It's almost impossible. But the way I tried to do it, this is what the website looks like. It's a tiny button here, but it says, find out how, take action. And as you click through on the different pages, there are calls to action, which will take you through to different non-profits and other foundations that can help people who come across these stories replicate those stories within their communities. I don't know if it's the best way to do it, but it's the way that I have decided to do it. Then think about collaborating. Some programs actually demand that you have an international team, for example. If you've ever looked at the European Journalism Centre grants, you need to have people from different countries working on the same project. But even if that's not the case, you can achieve so much more and so much more impact working with other people than you can as one person doing a project. And I learned this just in the last 9 months. I've been working with the Bureau Local, part of the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, on this project, which has, I've used my funding from my foundation to fund pretty much 9 months of work on this investigation. You may have seen it came out just last week. And that has been able to show more impact of the funding to my funder than anything that I was able to do on my own. Right, where to find funding? I'm afraid I don't really have any magic solutions to this one, but just Google the shit out of something. If you know what you want to do, find the funders that fund that kind of thing. There is some websites like this Rory Peck Trust that I've found that have lists of grants. Open Society Foundation has lists of different grants that you might be able to apply for. There are a couple of Twitter handles that you can follow that have these kinds of opportunities. But mostly, and actually I've been doing this more recently, is just be really brave. So now I work in local economies. I am in touch with all these different groups and organizations who run local economies or help local economies or fund local economies, and I talk to them, like, what do you need? Like, how can I serve that need for those people? And I pitch them ideas. Good luck.
I'll take that one. Hello? Hello? Questions, anybody? Come on, everyone wants money. Yeah, there we go. Right, go for it.
That's really interesting. Thank you. Just quick one. where is your stuff published? Are you freelancing for other places and pitching these stories elsewhere?
Yeah, so I'm writing for newspapers mostly, The Guardian, The Times, Independent, some magazines, Wired, GQ, Huck. And you're absolutely right to ask this question. I guess the implication there is like editorial lines. How do you deal with being funded and then also editorial independence? So my Far Nearer project is funded to interview people for this website that I've made, or I've got someone to make for me. And I basically use this as a kind of first round of reporting that I can then I can put together pitches from. And from that, I will often pitch stories to these outlets.
Oh, right at the other end.
Hello, thank you for this. I've seen loads of different grants and I'm always scared to apply, so thank you for giving the kick. So I have two questions really. The first one, how long do you usually use on time on writing the applications and stuff like that? And how much do you focus on kind of talking about how much you're going to spend on each thing, money-wise? Because I'm always scared, if I think of an idea, it's I'm not sure how much it's going to cost. Should I tell them, oh, I will go there and this will cost this and this and this? Or is that allowed to kind of go afterwards? Or, something like that, sorry.
What was the first question again?
How long do you usually spend on one grant application?
That one just depends how much I want it and also how much time I have. It's like a job application. But as much time as I possibly can. And you want to hand in something that's your best work, as always. And with the funding thing, I don't know. I still think, with the Friends Provident one, honestly, their fellowship was worth 45k. So I was applying for that. It was the same application. So by default, that was how much money I asked for. But often they'll have funding limits. And if they don't, I'm still working out how you pitch that and worrying that underselling myself. It's a normal thing, but I guess I try and cost it out as honestly as possible, what my day rate is, how much money it costs to travel to somewhere, how long I'm going to spend there, how many nights accommodation I need, whether I need any assistance if I'm shooting documentary, if I need a video editor. So you can just break it down by what you need to deliver the project and then put together a budget that way.
Just behind you.
Hello, thank you so much for doing this talk. It's really interesting. I just wanted to ask you a question about how much you think funders are interested in the idea itself or the person being able to do it. So whether they are impressed with your background, because it is impressive, very cool, or whether they think the idea is one that will carry itself through and they have, therefore, faith in the person who has created it. Because I'm just wondering what would be more likely with your experience working with them to help your application.
I think neither. I think funders are only interested in one thing, and that's somebody that can deliver something for them. And you need to figure out what that is. And if you can nail that, either by talking to other people or by talking to the funders themselves, then probably doesn't matter who you are, If you know what they want and you've proved that you can deliver it to them, then that works. I mean, if it's the fellowship thing, lots of these foundations, they're funding things as a kind of prestige thing, and they want a big journalist to put their name on that. So that's, I think, why I didn't get the fellowship in the first round, and the people they've funded in the fellowship since then, they're big names, because often these foundations, they want somebody big, that's going to look really good for them. But if you can also fill a need for them in some other way, that's not that, then you've got a good chance, I think.
Any more for any more? All right. Hazel, thank you hugely for that. Really, really interesting. And I'm sure our friends at the Google News Initiative will be enormously relieved to know that you can solve journalistic problems by Googling the shit out of it. That sort of brings us to the end for this evening. I'm right, yeah? I'm not cancelling somebody. Okay, that brings us to I arrived late. It's been a bit of a day. Apologies. That brings us to the end for this evening, but we are all about to decamp from here and go to find the Crown. The Crown? It is called the Crown. The Crown pub nearby. Please come and join us for a drink. Thank you all so much for coming. Happy evenings.